For more on this, let's cross to Tristan Webb, who's a senior analyst at the Korea Risk Group. Thank you for joining us here. I'd like to ask you, we've now got, for the second time in less than a month, North Korea's fired a ballistic missile over Japan. This does now appear to be its further ever missile flight, and it does follow new UN sanctions that just came out this week. We've got Abe calling for more international response, but really, at this stage, what can be done? What's new? What's another option?
Well, it's difficult. The current round of sanctions, indeed, more sanctions alone certainly will not be enough. And even Nikki Haley, the US permanent representative to the United Nations, has acknowledged that sanctions alone may well not be enough. At some point, there needs to be dialogue. The questions are, at what point is the right point? And when dialogue happens, what do people talk about? On that last point, what to talk about, this is the biggest problem, I think. North Korea insists that the game has now changed, that it is a nuclear power with ICBM capabilities, and that negotiations need to reflect that. However, the US and South Korea insist that North Korea must take steps towards denuclearization before there can be meaningful progress in talks. So there's a really completely incompatible position there. And one side needs to make considerable movement before talks could succeed. The second question is when talks might happen. South Korea's President Moon Jae-in has said that now is obviously not the right time due to all these provocations. There is a glimmer of hope in my assessment, which is that with all of these accelerated testing from North Korea, maybe, just maybe, if it feels that it has completed sufficient testing for Washington to believe that North Korea does have the capability to have a second strike against the USA if the USA took military options, then North Korea might say, okay, we've reached a sufficient degree of testing our missiles. Now we can join the negotiation table and see what the Americans are prepared to offer. But for now, that looks a long way off.
Well, so that being said, what exactly is it, and that's been the question all along, that North Korea wants? Is it simply recognition, saying, in terms of what level it is on the international stage?
Well, there are lots of things that North Korea wants. It's difficult exactly to be completely sure about what they want because we refuse, as generally as an international community, to engage in talks with them. If we engaged in talks with them, we'd have a clearer idea. And we should also remember that there are different voices within Pyongyang, which is very difficult for us to be aware of. So there are hardliners and softliners. We're aware of that much. But for me to give an answer to your question directly, I would say that militarily, what they want is to develop a second strike capability against the US in order to deter an invasion. They also want leverage in negotiations, and having a nuclear ICBM is arguably the best leverage that they could have. And also they want to show a defiance against the United Nations Security Council, whose sanctions North Korea regard as illegal. Finally, one of the big things that they want is to split US alliances in the region and to weaken the US hold in the region. So by, for example, flying these missiles over Japan, North Korea is driving a wedge between South Korean Moon Jae-in, who wants a more dovish approach to North Korea, and President Trump, who wants as much pressure as possible. One thing that is interesting to note is that no attempt appears to have been made by the US or its allies to shoot down any of these missiles. The US has made much of its anti-ballistic missile technology, but it doesn't seem that they have tried to shoot down these missiles that have been flying over Japan. So that raises a question about, in the US's allies' minds, about just how willing and capable is the US to actually defend its allies in the region from North Korean missiles.
Tristan, thank you for that. Tristan Webb joining us there.